In the next room, current UFC welterweight champion Georges Saint Pierre arrives to talk to the press.
Do you think it's important to conduct yourself well outside of the octagon?
Yes, it is, especially for me, I think, because I'm champion, and I know a lot of young people, young teenagers look up to me, and they take me as an example, and for me it's important to carry myself way, to show a good example. Time for time, if you take, for somebody has dominated the most, the sport at his time, it was Royce Gracie, but now the sport has changed. And Royce Gracie is my idol. He's the guy who, like he was for me, the reason why I started martial art, because I was very inspired by him.
When you say you were inspired by Royce Gracie, what was it about him that inspired you as a fighter?
It was the fact that at the time he had a weapon that nobody knew, which is the grappling art. At the time where I come from, everybody thought that a fight was only a stand-up battle. And he came in with some technique that it was unknown at the time, and he submit people, even if he was the smaller guy, and he beat everybody. And for me, it was really impressive.
The UFC was a lot different when Royce Gracie fought. Do you think you would do well in the UFC of those days?
I think I would, but yeah, it's a different. It's like any other sport, you know. If you took a baseball, the 100 meter, Usain Bolt just beat the world record. If you take Usain Bolt and you make him run against a guy who used to run the 100 meter, I don't know, 100 years, not 100, but like 10 years ago, Usain Bolt would be ahead by far. I think the fighter will just keep getting better, better, and better.
How much of fighting in the UFC is mental and how much is physical for you?
It's really mental now because my training is done. So I would say the physical part is over now. It's only mentally.
And what's the rest of the week going to look like for you mentally? How are you?
Visualization, drilling some techniques, stuff like that. It's nothing hard.
What will you be visualizing?
The way I'm gonna get out of some bad situation, and the way I'm gonna win the fight.
The next fighter to arrive is former WWE wrestler and current UFC heavyweight champion Brock Lesnar.
Brock, do you think because you're such a big guy, there's more pressure on you to conduct yourself well outside the octagon?
Well, I don't exactly blend in with the crowd, you know, so I can't really, you know, no, I don't know. There's just being a husband and being a father and being the UFC champion, there's a lot of responsibility. You got to accept that, you know, that's part of life. And but I don't let anything bother me too much.
Do you feel that pressure though to behave in a particular way outside of the octagon?
I don't feel any pressure. I behave how I want to, and that's, you know, I try to be a good role model, be a good husband, be a good father. So no, I don't feel anything like that.
In the city that night, I thought about how Lesnar had compared being a role model with being a father, and how responsibility had been one of the first things that came to mind when I talked about his position in the UFC. The next day I went to speak to a couple of British fighters who weren't fighting that weekend, but who could tell me about their own experience. I met first with lightweight Terry Etim, who's been in the UFC for 2 years and has won his last 3 fights.
Obviously show your opponent respect before the fight, after the fight, but during the fight, you know, a lot of that respect goes out the window because I want to win the fight that much. But as I say, as soon as I've won the fight, all the respect's back, and I shake his hand and even go for a drink with him.
And do you think, can you tell me about, you know, you say the respect goes out the window during the fight. Do you think it's important for you to keep a distance from your opponent?
I mean, a lot of people are different, but myself, that's the way that I look at it, you know. During the fight, that's my worst enemy, you know. I want to win the fight so much, and he's trying to take that away from me. So, your opponent's trying to hurt you bad, and obviously I'm trying to do the same to him, you know, whatever it takes to win the fight. So, that respect during the fight has got to go out the window. I think a lot of fighting is a lot to do with the mental side, you know. I think that's 50% of it, do you know what I mean? A big part of it's mental. I think if you beat in your head before the fight, it's no good. I mean, you've got to have a really strong head to fight. And obviously, the other 50% is the physical part, you know, how hard you train and stuff like that.
And when you say beating your head, what does that mean?
Beating your head, you know, there's a lot of fighters who can go in there and they obviously don't believe that they can win that fight, or they have showed their opponent too much respect. Do you get what I mean?
And does that, would you say that then crosses into fear?
Of course, yeah. Well, no, not just fear, but, you know, obviously if you don't believe that you can beat an opponent, what's the point being there? Do you know what I mean?
And in your head, what sort of strategies, what sort of thoughts, what do you use to stop you from feeling like that in the week of the fight?
I mean, I know myself personally how hard that I train. You know, I push myself to the absolute limit, and like so do my team as well. So the week before the fight, I know that my opponent has not trained and put the hours in, hasn't woke up every morning at 5:30 and gone on them 6-mile runs every single morning, and I'm 100% confident. Do you know what I mean? Where if you haven't got up and you haven't put the hours in on the road, and you haven't been in the gym every day, twice a day, that's when you're going to start doubting yourself.